With a few basic electronics, a pile of Lego, and an unhealthy addiction to Gameboy modding, we came up with our latest project, the wireless Lego controller for Nintendo Handheld systems. In this video specifically, we'll be creating the wireless controller and testing it on the DS Lite console. Our basic vision was to create a wireless controller smaller than an NES controller that could function on most Nintendo handheld systems. Our vision started with a Lego base plate, and then building up a basic design to mimic the NES controller. Once a basic outline was created, we then focused our attention on the electronics, specifically starting on the orientation of the USB-C charging module. We felt that the bottom left-hand corner was the right location for the USB-C charging module, as well as the battery, so we went about soldering the components together. We then went about adding a clear Lego tile to reflect the LED light from the charging module, and then went about mounting the electronic components in place with some double-sided tape and glue. The next part of the process was to mount the wireless transmitter board and buttons to the controller. Once happy with the fitment and orientation, we went about soldering the ground and voltage wire to the USB-C charging module. The next part of the process was to solder the analog stick, and we soon found out, just like our Game Boy Advance analog build, that 10K resistors must be installed first. We then went about testing the functionality of the electronics before focusing our attention on the front faceplate design. There's no hiding that we're Nintendo and Lego lovers, so we wanted to reflect this in this build. We went about selecting tiles that would showcase a fun-loving gaming environment. We went about drilling and machining some of the rear of the Lego pieces to ensure that they fit the electronics of the controller perfectly. We had something great in mind for the last 4x4 Lego piece for the A and B buttons. We then went about installing the electronics for the DS Lite console. We stripped the wireless receiver down to its bare minimum so that it would fit in the DS Lite shell. The rear of the shell also had to be machined, and basic electronics were soldered to the touch points on the DS Lite motherboard. After a little bit of time and patience, and some basic electronics and Lego skills, we now have a wireless controller for the Nintendo handheld consoles. The finished product is smaller than an original NES controller and features an analog directional key as well as A and B buttons. It also contains a USB-C charging slot and 300 mAh battery. The pros of this build is that we have another unique mod for the Nintendo handheld systems. We envisage this mod being developed over time, and we've already started testing it on the Game Boy Color and Game Boy Advance consoles. Adding a docking station and HDMI out to any console, we see this being a retro version of the Nintendo Switch. The cons of this build is that there is no DIY kit, and everything has to be created from scratch. Planning has to go into the orientation and the design of this console. And using a wireless transmitter, there are only 6 output signals, meaning that you only can use a directional and A and B buttons. Not to mention the minute lag between the controller and receiver. However, we're overall pleased with the aesthetics and functionality of the wireless receiver for the Nintendo handheld system. We're already in talks with some major developers to create a DIY kit for the Game Boy DMG console. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Stay safe.